Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharika Lampkin-Briscoe, and I am your facilitator for today for Mental Health First Aid Adults. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for being a part of today's training. I know that virtual trainings can be a lot, and in the state that we're in, it does the mind justice to be able to see the person next to you and engage. So we're going to make this the most interactive training that we could possibly have virtually. So with that being said, want to give you a little insight on who your trainer is. So I'm a person that lived with lived experience. I have 13 years of recovery, and I'm also living with mental health disorder. My mental health disorder sometimes can affect my engagement, which is why I became a trainer because I wanted to be able to work through um, my diagnoses, and I wanted to be able to use my mental health disorders as an insight to how we really can support one another. As a person with social anxiety and racing thoughts and PTSD, sometimes it can be difficult to engage with other people. But I have found in the last 7 years that I've been a trainer that it has really um, done me a lot of good. And being able to utilize my platform to just engage with other people. I learned that when I'm able to tell some of my story, and I'm able to give insight as to who I am, it kind of helps because there are a lot of people who look like me who are afraid to say that they need support or that they live with a mental health disorder or that they have gone through substance use disorder. So it's very encouraging to be able to know that my story helps someone else through their process. So, with that being said, you may see me snap or say, my mind is going a million miles an hour and I am working to refocus it. And so, in some spaces, my nerves will go right before my mouth starts to speak, and I'm caught in trying to figure it out. So if you catch it, it's fine. You might see me laugh about it because I have learned that laughing through it is better than being fearful of it. So with that being said, let's dig into mental health first aid. So when we look at our mental health first aid plan, we see that we had 2.5 hours of pre-work that we were to do on our own before we got to today's training. That pre-work helped explore the algae a little bit itself and also just the process of being a mental health first aider. So we're going to take everything that you guys have read and done on your own, and we're going to put it in an interactive space here on today's training. So we're going to open our books. A lot of them were downloaded. You were able to download the book. If you weren't, please let me know, and I can send you a copy of the downloaded version. But we're going to open our books to the section where we talk about listening non-judgmentally. So when we look at this section of the algae, the L, which is listening non-judgmentally, what's the first thing that you think of? So for me, I think of listening to someone so that you better understand what they're going through instead of listening to respond. In a lot of spaces, we find that people shy away from talking to others because they feel like what they're saying is not important, or that you're not listening, or that you're listening to respond because you feel like you know everything. Being a mental health first aider is really about listening and understanding. It's about providing a space where an individual, our members, you and I, feel like we have someone on our side that supports us. Now, it doesn't mean that we agree with everything that's being said, but it means that we have empathy of understanding. It means that I may not know what you're going through, or I may not have gone through it, or I may not know what it feels like to go through this particular thing, but I'm listening to understand. So with that, we're going to do an exercise of listening and non-listening. So give me some examples of ways that you know someone is listening to you and ways you know someone's not listening to you. Okay, so let's explore. When we're talking about listening, some will say that, having perfect posture and kind of looking directly at your client with your hands kind of down on your lap, and you're able to regurgitate what they're saying kind of in the way. So if I say to you, I felt like my wife wasn't listening to me when I told her that red was a spiteful color for me. And your return response is, okay, I understand that you said your wife wasn't listening to you with red not being your favorite color. Would you like to explore that more? For a lot of people, that's deemed listening. Being able to nod your head and respond right to what they're saying, respond to the question, respond to the comment, provide support. But in a lot of spaces, that can also be deemed as not listening. It could be deemed as you not hearing what they're saying, you're just repeating. It's also based on cultural perception. In a lot of cultures, people can't look at you face to face, eye contact. Eye contact for some is not possible. And it could do with past stressors, it can do with past traumatic events, it can do with religious beliefs, it could do with upbringing, it can do with a lot of things. And so, what we use as pros when we're talking about listening and not listening can also be used as cons in listening and not listening. But an additive to that, an extra add point, would be the nonverbal and verbal cues. So when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about a space where some things can see really different. Someone's day to day can be completely different based on just how their mental health feels, how they feel, how their mind feels, how their mind makes their body feel. So when we're engaging with an individual, we want to make sure that we are looking at everything. We're looking at the traditional ways of listening, not listening, but we're also listening to those verbal cues, those nonverbal cues. We're looking at the facial expressions, we're looking at the responses. Let's say there's someone else in the room. And when this person is in the room, the individual clams up, they become frozen in state, they get really, really quiet, they start fidgeting. Those are things that you look for when we're listening to someone, when we're engaging with someone. If conversation switches, we're listening for those. If an individual is kind of timid on what they want to talk about, or they talk a lot, we want to make sure that we position ourselves where we're able to hear them and listen for understanding. You also want to ensure that your nonverbal cues on your own face kind of are in control. A lot of times, we as case managers and peer support specialists, our expressions show on our face. And sometimes it's hard, especially when dealing with our members who have a hard time trusting us when they're talking and our facial expressions just all do its own thing, right? And so, as a first aider, we have to work on how we control our facial expressions, how we control our body language, but that all comes with getting to know the individual in which you're serving. I know for a group in which I do groups with almost every other day, I know that hand gestures are a focal point of all of the participants in that group. Every participant in that group used their hands as a way of expressing themselves. I also know that in that group, I have a member who does not like to see the color blue. And in order for that member to process sometimes, we have to discuss beforehand, before the group starts, hey, someone might come in the color blue. The color blue might flash, but you're safe. And when you feel, or if you feel a little uncomfortable because something may cross your mind associated with the color blue, then we're going to make sure that we use the hallway method. And me and you will step outside and we'll be able to process that. Mental health first aid is all about supporting an individual in, before, and during a mental health crisis, making sure they feel seen and heard, listened to, given reassurance, making sure we encourage them to take control of their mental health, but also to know when to seek out extra support. I want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for joining me today for today's training. I hope you guys were able to get a lot out today's session. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. After this training, you guys can go back to your platforms where you will be able to do an assessment of today's training and also take your test. And after you do both, you'll receive your certificate for the actual training itself. Please, by all means, do not give me all fives if you felt like I did not do a good job. I am here to learn and take the constructive criticism to become a better facilitator. If you felt like I did a good job, thank you very, very much. If there are areas of improvement, I appreciate that as well because I'm still learning. I hope you guys will use the algae and the things that we talked about today to heighten your understanding of the profession and the field and the population in which you serve. I want you guys to have a great afternoon, and my email is listed. So if there's any questions or comments that you have after this, I am available by email and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have a good afternoon, everyone.